Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really intense juxtaposition. We're going to bridge futuristic end times eschatology with a profoundly deep 7th century human story. We'll explore how ancient texts have been analyzed to predict the sheer complexity of our modern digital era, and then pivot to a historical case study that offers us a timeless, incredibly grounding solution. So, think about this for a second. What if ancient prophecies are actually a blueprint for right now? It's a completely fascinating question. How is it that 14th-century-old predictions regarding unseen threats and global deception seem to perfectly align with today's rapidly advancing tech dystopias? Well, our source material today explores exactly this. It maps out Islamic eschatology alongside modern geopolitical trends and then offers a remarkably practical framework for navigating the whole shebang. Here is our roadmap to unpack all of this. We're covering the prophecies of 2026, technology and spiritual deception, the drying Euphrates, shielding the mind and heart, the historical slander incident, and finally, the ultimate power of forgiveness. Let's jump right into Section 1, Prophecies of 2026, Decoding the Future. The source material highlights several physical shifts in the world that were foretold by the Prophet Muhammad. Take the prophecy that barefoot, uneducated people would suddenly gain immense wealth and compete in building incredibly tall skyscrapers. That is a striking parallel to the modern rise of cities like Dubai, right? Then, there are these predictions of time psychologically speeding up and highly unusual heavy rainfall turning the historically arid Arabian Peninsula green, something that modern climate models and recent crazy weather events definitely seem to be mirroring. But honestly, perhaps the most chilling prediction is that lifeless objects, which were described back then as the tip of a whip or the strap of a shoe, would literally speak to their owners and report on their families. Commentators argue this is a direct prophecy of the smartphones we carry everywhere. They are essentially our own personal spies wrapped in a leather case, constantly tracking and reporting our data. And this ancient framework becomes incredibly fascinating when applied to modern geopolitical analysis. The sources dissect a recent, highly symbolic cover of The Economist magazine, looking ahead to 2026, mapping its artwork straight back to these exact eschatological predictions. There's a take celebrating America's 250th anniversary, completely surrounded by chaos, which analysts interpret as the peak and sudden decline of American power. Then, there are satellites broadcasting signals. In this context, they represent not just digital surveillance, but the modern equivalent of what Islamic texts call jinned intelligence, unseen forces gathering massive amounts of data. Scattered pills and syringes suggest the human body itself is becoming the ultimate biological battlefield. And most disturbingly, a human brain connected directly to a video game controller, pointing squarely to the rise of neurotechnology and mind control. Moving on to Section 2, Technology and Spiritual Deception and the Illusion of Control. So the concept of fitna is absolutely crucial here. Great scholars like Ibn Arabi describe this end-times deception not as some cartoonish magic, but as profound, sophisticated psychological manipulation. The sources suggest that the Dajjal system operates heavily through intelligence gathering. Historically, this was attributed to unseen jinn whispering into the hearts of leaders. Today, it manifests through data harvesting algorithms. It's a massive organizational structure designed to observe our human weaknesses, analyze our deepest fears, and relentlessly exploit our emotional entry points. Because, let's be real, the absolute best way to deceive someone is to make them feel completely free. It's a brilliant tactic, and it's mirrored perfectly by modern neuromarketing and algorithmic echo chambers. The system might present you with options A, B, and C. You think you are freely choosing C, but the algorithm, which has completely analyzed your digital footprint, already knew you would choose C. Options A and B, they were just fake options designed to give you the illusion of agency. Think about your own social media feed. How often are your choices actually yours? According to the sources, while modern society is completely trapped in these algorithmic dopamine loops, true freedom is found in servitude to the divine, maintaining a pure heart that can just reject these subconscious manipulations entirely. That brings us to Section 3, the drying Euphrates, covering environmental and economic crisis. There is a famous and frankly terrifying prophecy stating that the Euphrates River will dry up and reveal a mountain of gold. And when this happens, people will fight so fiercely over this wealth that out of every 100 people who fight for it, 99 will die. The sources frame this as the ultimate test of human greed. It's where environmental collapse violently intersects with resource wars, and believers are strictly warned to walk away from this cursed treasure entirely.
Adding to this, the texts of the 13th century mystic Ibn Arabi paint a remarkably grim picture for this era. It reads almost like a cascading series of dominoes falling. First, it starts with years characterized by highly destructive winds, which could be symbolic of rapidly spreading chaos or literal violent weather anomalies. This leads to sudden diseases that wipe out what he called the donkey kind. Modern commentators interpret this as a sudden collapse in livestock, transportation, or major supply chains. And when those supply chains break, the next domino falls, an overwhelming public desire for looting and plunder, driven by pure economic desperation. Finally, all of this culminates in deepening geopolitical chaos localized in Yemen, Iraq, and the Sham region, which encompasses modern-day Syria.
Okay, Section 4, Shielding the Mind and Heart. How do we build defenses against this deception? With this incredibly chaotic future established, how do the sources advise actually protecting oneself? They offer a very specific defense against this overarching fitna. A verse in the Quran says, "O believers, if a sinful person brings you news, verify it." Now, long before the era of digital rumors, this verse established a strict, non-negotiable protocol for information verification. It acts as a timeless mental firewall against a world that is now overflowing with designed misinformation, fake news, and deepfakes. Let's break down how this builds into an actionable, three-step defense mechanism for the modern believer. Step 1 is controlling your digital choices. This means actively implementing digital fasting so you aren't constantly plugged into that dopamine matrix we talked about earlier. Step 2 is dhikr, meaning continuous remembrance and meditation. The logic here is incredibly sound. If your mind is already occupied with higher spiritual thoughts, there's literally no empty space for external algorithmic manipulation to take root. And step 3 is rigorous critical thinking. You have to constantly question the source, the intent, and the ultimate purpose of every single piece of media you consume. Which perfectly sets up Section 5, the slander incident, our 7th century case study. To truly understand how to apply this verification and purification, we need to look at the story of a companion named Mista ibn Uthatha. Now, Mr. wasn't a hypocrite, he wasn't a villain, actually, he was an incredibly honorable guy. He was one of the earliest converts to Islam and a veteran who fought bravely at the pivotal Battle of Badr. He was also a very poor man, completely financially dependent on the charity of his wealthy relative, Abu Bakr. Yet, when a massive public slander, known as the Ifk, was launched against Abu Bakr's daughter, Aisha, the young wife of the Prophet, Mista fell into the trap. His tongue slipped, and he actively participated in spreading the devastating rumor. The sources emphasize a really powerful lesson in justice here. Despite Mista's noble background and his close familial relation to Abu Bakr, the Prophet Muhammad applied the law impartially. Mista was publicly flogged for his role in the slander, and Abu Bakr, acting out of what is frankly an entirely understandable deep human hurt and profound betrayal, swore an oath to immediately cut off all the financial charity he had been providing him. You can absolutely understand Abu Bakr's reaction here. I mean, this was the man who had just helped drag his beloved daughter's name through the mud. And this brings us to Section 6, the power of forgiveness, the ultimate solution. What followed was a remarkable divine intervention addressing Abu Bakr directly. And what's wild is that it didn't command revenge. It acknowledged Abu Bakr's virtue and his wealth, but it asked him to prioritize radical forgiveness. The revered verse asks, "Would you not love that Allah should forgive you?" It is essentially asking the believer to extend the exact same mercy they hope to receive from the divine, even when the worldly pain they've suffered is 100% justified. Upon hearing this verse, Abu Bakr's response was instant. He cried out, "Yes, by Allah," and immediately restored the financial charity to Mistah. What's truly beautiful about this historical account is that there was no lingering excommunication. There was no 7th century cancel culture. Mistah was seamlessly reintegrated back into the community, he was treated with the dignity of his early sacrifices, and he lived out the rest of his days in peace. Abu Bakr's immediate compliance demonstrates that overcoming deception, overcoming scandal, and overcoming deep personal hurt requires a heart pure enough to completely let go of the ego. Which leaves us with this final thought. We started out today looking at a terrifying future filled with algorithmic manipulation, resource wars, and the sophisticated deceptions of the Dajjal system. But the sources suggest that the ultimate defense isn't just turning off your phone or unplugging from technology. It is the fundamental state of the human heart. Navigating the futuristic fitna of 2026 and beyond relies entirely on cultivating that same pure, unclouded heart that Abu Bakr demonstrated centuries ago. A heart that is capable of immense critical clarity, but above all else, radical forgiveness. So the question is,
as the illusions around us grow stronger and more complex every single day. Will we be ready?